Thank you so much for inviting me. And so I take the opportunity to tackle this regional conflict. And for each country in the region, it's a national conflict as well. And my purpose was to talk about the countries themselves, DRC, because I lived in that country called Zaire, at that Burundi. I was a student, and of course, I was a testimony of the genocide in Burundi in 1972, and Burundi, because I was born in Rwanda, sorry. Even though I didn't live for a long time in that country, my parents live over there, and I know what happens over there much better maybe than people who live over there. So having said that, after listening to the speakers, I slightly changed my topic, if you don't mind, because why should I reiterate what was said this morning? And the famous speakers gave a good analysis of the situation. They did elaborate upon the Rwandan genocide, the Tutsi genocide, the Hutu power. Someone spoke about the Hutu power, the current situation in DRC, etc., with the developments. So I slightly changed my presentation. And it is much more important to speak about the current situation instead of talking about Berlin, the Berlin issues, the Belgian influence, etc., in Rwanda or in Burundi or in Congo. So my topic about the current situation in the three countries, especially Rwanda, because of course I know very well this country. As you said, sir, I was ambassador in Paris in October 1990. I was appointed in Paris in September 1990. I was the ambassador at the African Union Organization for the predecessor of the African Union. And then Rwanda was attacked. So, of course, I decided to cope with all the problems. I had to cope with many problems in Kigali for some specific problems, for example, in France, for French issues, of course, because I had to make proposals, and especially the RPF, sorry, because we had to reassure the embassies, etc. And during that period, I realized that it was not an easy job for me to be the ambassador, especially during that period of war, and because of those conflicts between ethnic groups. So I'm not going to talk about the history of the conflict between Hutus and Tutsis in Rwanda or Burundi, because this conflict does not exist, would not exist in DRC. I would live with Rwandan people who said that they were of Hutu origin or Tutsi origin. I've never heard about the Baganga, I would say. But these people came from other areas, but they were not Banyamulenge. They were Congolese people. After, in 1997, that was a notion that was added to the complexity. The Banyamulenge, for example, or the Tutsi coming from the south of Kivu, wanted to be considered as Tutsi people, closer to Rwanda, for example, compared to Congo. That was their own country, and that raised a big problem at that time. But before I tackle this issue, first of all, I would like to add something about some statements that were made this morning, if you don't mind. For example, regarding the Hutu power, it means nothing. It is a meaningless word. Sorry for that. For those who use the expression, Hutu power doesn't mean anything. It is a meaningless word. For our history in Rwanda, it's a word that was used for the first time by Mr. Karamira from the opposing parties, opponents, He was the leader of that party, and he launched this Hutu power movement. That was at the stadium in Kigali. I was always surprised by that. Why should he encourage this expression, advocate for this expression, Hutu power? So searchers, I believe that searchers should try to avoid using this word, meaningless word. What does it mean, Hutu power in Rwanda? It doesn't mean anything. I don't know, but it doesn't mean anything. The Tutsis don't have the monopoly, but maybe they are prevalent. But what about the Hutu power? It might be very problematic for the situation. Next, and I would like to focus upon the role played by France in Rwanda. At that time, I was the ambassador in France for 5 years during the war period. And Mr. Vedrin used the expression masochist attitude. This is reality. I wonder what French people are looking for in order to reach that situation, because French people are blamed for rescuing people, Rwandan people. I'm surprised. France, at least French troops, regarding the turquoise operation, military operation, French troops are the only troops, together with some African troops, who have been able to, on this planet, they are the only ones who have been able to rescue Rwandan people, apart from some Hutus who were hidden, etc., and apart from some foreigners, etc., but who did the same, and some Tutsis who were hidden in the forest, in the woods, in the bushes, etc., and made the most of it to join the RPF. But let me repeat that French troops, and in addition to collaborators from Senegal and Chad, etc., are the only ones who've been able to rescue thousands and thousands of Tutsi people. France put an end to this genocide in the southwest of western part of it. This is reality. I went to visit the turquoise area in August 1994 as the Minister of Foreign Affairs. I was lucky. I had the opportunity to meet with those refugees, Tutsi refugees, who were based at the Nyushishi camp, and they were rescued by and protected by France. French troops that were able to disarm the rebels. So that was the role played by France. They did not shoot at them, they rescued them. And on top of that, those Tutsi people were rescued by creating this turquoise area. The operation made it possible to those thousands of people, of Tutsi or Hutu Rwandan people, who would come from the north, because there's something that you don't know, ladies and gentlemen. Since 1990, because of the onslaught of the RPF in that area, they killed thousands of people over there in the northern part, in the north, especially the Hutu families. They were totally exterminated. Well, of course, officially speaking, it's not a genocide, but it is actually a genocide. And why shouldn't I use the word? I cannot deny it, because I did pronounce this word, genocide of Tutsis, for the first time on April the 1st, 1994, because part of my family was killed. Members of my family were killed. I also have Hutu members who belong to my family, and they were killed by the RPF. When I say that, do I deny the fact that there was a genocide for my Tutsi family? I believe that we have, of course, to call a spade. In Rwanda, there are not only Tutsis born before and after 1994. There was a people of Hutu, 85% of the population, and 14% of Tutsi, and 1% of Pygmies, the Bakwa population, the Bakwa or Batwa, in regarding other tribes in Congo. Those crimes committed by RPF because of Kagame in the north, the crimes, the mass killings, that was part of history. And otherwise, I mean, we cannot deny it. There is the Human Rights Watch report about that was drafted before he got in power. Then there are some other reports drafted by Médecins Sans Frontières that describe what was happening at that time. And then we had other examples of action committed by the RPF. There was a kind of plan of extermination of the Hutus called Puruza. Puruza means reduction of the population. Or Flagia means to wipe out the population. These are officials from the RPF that told us about that, the Puruza and Flagia. That was a project, that was a program that was drafted at that time. And then I spent 3 months in Kigali after the genocide of the Tutsi. I did realize that the RPF, while we were trying to build up, to do something in favor of reconciliation, the RPF troops, they would kill the Hutus. That was part of the described in a report, the Garçonnet report from the UN Commission, and that was about a genocide. The RPF had killed roughly 40,000 Hutus. 40,000 Hutus. Was it a genocide? 40,000 people? Of course it was a genocide. In Srebrenica, there were 8,000. The death toll was about 8,000. Why not calling it a genocide between July and September 1994 because of the RPF? This is a genocide. Also for the Hutu people who were killed in the camp, the RPF shot at them. All the refugees were killed massively. And the death toll was about 8,000. 8,000 were killed. Was it a genocide? I use the word genocide regarding Article R2 of the Convention. About the Convention. This is, of course, genocide regarding the CPPCG Convention. So I invite the searchers to think about it. We need, of course, to be able to analyze, to give a very clear analysis of the situation. Whenever we say these are Tutsi, it's a genocide. Well, whenever we say Hutus, this is not a genocide. Of course not. They are human beings by virtue of the Article 2 of the 1948 Convention, the CPPCG. It is, of course, described as a genocide. And I believe that, I hope that, if I talk about Congo or DRC, I will do the same analysis. Congo has never attacked Rwanda. Congo never killed Rwandan people in Rwanda. Never ever. Maybe there were some victims in Congo for any other different reasons, if you will. But in the opposite, our army, our forces sent in Congo in 1996, they killed millions of Congolese people. These people were assassinated, and, well, these are maybe so-called collateral damages, but I don't like this expression, because whenever some civilians are killed in the bushes, in the forest, for example, whenever they undergo bad conditions, of course, and if they are killed because of that, by virtue of Article 2 of the 1948 Convention, this is called genocide. So, regarding the message conveyed to the Congolese population, I would say that, to be honest, the Congolese population, people, first of all, let's start with the Rwandan people. They should ask for mercy. They should be brave for that. This is what we do if we want to go on with reconciliation, the reconciliation process. And we could say, okay, we attacked Congo at first, but we have to recognize it, to acknowledge it. And because as a consequence, millions of Congolese people were killed because of that, because of the Rwandan onslaught. I will not elaborate on that, but I believe that, as Dr. Mukwege said, I believe that the mapping report, the UN mapping report about crimes committed in Congo, about Congolese and Rwandan people, I think that France, the US, and the world developed countries should, of course, focus upon this report that was drafted, because this report is moldering in the drawers, including the report drafted by the International Court of Justice. I was just talking with the investigators. Whenever they came over in 2003, and whenever they concluded, the investigators told me, "Sir, thank you for what you've done for us. But unfortunately, the report, this is the end of the report." I remember we were staying at the Georges V Hotel. Yes, sorry, this is the termination of this report. A big report. The conclusion was that RPF was the originator of the genocide in Rwanda from January 1994 until the end of 1994. And that was the conclusion of the ICTR in the report. That was their conclusion. They said that the RPF was the originator of that. Well, it's just simple. Mrs. Gala-Ponte, she was the prosecutor, and she was informed by the United States and by the United Nations institutions, and she was told not to consider this report anymore. I was surprised. This is what she told me in Den Haag, and with Mrs. Ndagijimana. And she was in jail. She was in jail because she did ask for compassion in favor of the Hutu population. And this lady said, "Sorry, I can't do anything about that. I cannot produce this report. It can be exposed. I cannot listen to the U.S.-American expert, Mr. Gassoni. Mr. Gassoni was never ever able to comment on the report." I called Mrs. Ogata, and Mrs. Ogata said, "No way, no way, no way," she said. No way. That person wasn't able to attend the ICTR. Why? Because it was just a question to hide to deny the RPF crimes, and then they believe that we are called as we are considered as negationist. No, we are looking for equality regarding this type of exercise of remembrance between Hutus and Tutsis, and that is the alternative. For a long-lasting peace development in Rwanda, should we look for this type of reconciliation, I think that we need to be able to accept that the Hutu victims have the right to be considered, to be buried with dignity, like their brothers and sisters, Hutu brothers and sisters. This is so much important. It's a question of dignity, in order to pay a tribute to their parents who were killed by the RPF members. Because if the Hutus were killed by that, they are not allowed to pay a tribute publicly. This is just for the Hutus. the Tutsis. I went to the memorial in Brussels, the genocide memorial in Brussels, because the word Tutsis was not added on the memorial, with my friends from the Rwandan Association, and a Belgian senator said that we did spoil the blood of Tutsi people. I was surprised, and I said, why? Why that? Why that? Because we feel compassion for Tutsis and Hutus, and how can you prevent us from having this approach? So what about the consequences of that regarding the current situation in Rwanda? We talk about reconciliation, as Paul Kagame would say. I believe this is the opposite that happened. This is the opposite. Let me give you the example of Burundi. Burundi, after the war, after 1972, in the aftermath, what did they do in Burundi? They had a meeting in Arusha, and a peace agreement was signed based upon this type of equal consensus, if you will. What does it mean? It means that they were realistic, pragmatic, and they said from now on, we will, all of us, we will participate in the management of our country, and some levels were identified for that. Tutsis, for example, who do not have the majority, for example, will join the army, 50% of them. Today, this is what happens today in order to provide peace and to maintain this type of balance, this continuum, and this is what the Burundi people accepted. They tried to share the power among ethnic groups. What happened in Rwanda? Paul Kagame said, okay, we are in power. From now on, there are no more ethnic groups in Rwanda. But we will say that there was a genocide because of Tutsis. If you want to cancel the notion of ethnic groups, in this case, you don't talk about the ethnic groups anymore. We can talk about Tutsi victims, but you cannot say that there are some ethnic groups in that country, in Rwanda. Next, every year we will pay a tribute to the victims of the Tutsi people who were killed by the Hutus. But in the opposite, regarding Hutu people who were killed by the RPF in Rwanda before 1994 or after, or in the DRC, all this is forgot. All this is forgot. Why? Because those who were at the origin of mass killings are those who are in power today. So, as a consequence, parents of the victims, of Hutu victims, are not allowed to lodge a complaint against the RPF members because they are in power at the present time. This is reality. They are not allowed to lodge a complaint against any RPF members, and imagine their parents were killed. Now, regarding assistance to the victims for their rehabilitation, the aid received by Rwanda through the FARG. The FARG is a fund for aimed at the rehabilitation of for these survivors. The funds, even though Rwandan civil servants, etc., have to pay for that, they have to pay for the fund, but they cannot benefit from it, even though they were victims, considered as victims. I'm just telling you the truth, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe you do not agree with me. Please tell me if you don't agree with me. So this fund is only in favor of Tutsi families. In other words, Hutu children who lost their parents, orphans, by the way. They don't get even one penny from the fund, while their friends from Minerval, etc., receive the funds. Do you think that this is reconciliation? Of course, that leads to frustrations, and people at the end of the day, they will be jealous. They will feel hatred Okay, so I think that we are preparing something else. I'm not talking about, I wouldn't dare talking about a future genocide, but this is the pathway to a future genocide, because this ethnic aspect is exacerbated, and this is my fear. Because if Hutus are able to defend themselves, I believe that the situation will not be good. If the Hutu population is able to get some assistance or whatever, they will set up strong and robust armed forces. There will be a war in Rwanda, not on the border with Congo, inside Rwanda. And that will lead to major problems. This is not what I wish, of course, but this is my fear. And whenever people believe that everything is okay, everything is fine, President Kagame is the hero of reconciliation, he is able to make this country be thriving, etc. This is a big mistake. Before 1990, we believed that President Habyarimana was the right man, the right president. Maybe it was true, that was true, but that wasn't true for everything he would do. Now, regarding refugees today, there are thousands of refugees all over the world, Brandon, all over the world. Hutu refugees and Tutsi refugees, generals who leave, and officials, etc. Citizens, ordinary citizens, Tutsi citizens, they cannot bear this regime anymore. And because that leads to this is more and more dangerous. 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, on February the 17th, a young Rwandan man, Kizito Mihigo, a Tutsi musician, was a victim who had been a victim of the genocide. I mean, he survived. He died in Kigali. And the government said that he committed suicide. This is not true. This is not true. He was killed by the regime. Definitely. Why? Why this young survivor did become the target of the regime? Why? Of the RPF. Why did he become the target of the regime? Because like myself and other people, he realized that the question of remembrance was not sufficiently tackled, that it would lead to conflicts and frustrations, especially for people who are non-Tutsi people. This young man was a brilliant young man, and some Rwandan people talked with him, and the Rwandan government, regardless of the fact that Rwandan government would prevent him from talking to people. And Kizito Mihigo, he was an artist, a musician, used his art to promote reconciliation, the real remembrance. He has a famous song for Congolese people. He said, "You, my brothers from Congo, we are brothers, While Rwandan troops were killing the Congolese people, Kizito Mihigo would say, "We are brothers." So he sang a beautiful song. He said that all the victims, regardless of their ethnicity, should be honored. And regarding the Paul Kagame's regime, he would never, ever accept that. I created a foundation, Uivukabose, remembrance and remembrance for everybody and justice, since 2004, and I was in touch with this foundation, Kizito Mihigo Foundation. And from that day, whenever I created this foundation, because before there was the Ibuka Foundation just in favor of the Tutsi victims, while our foundation was aiming at all victims, Hutu, Tutsis, even foreigners killed in Rwanda. From that day, I was considered as a negationist. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, because I wanted to pay a tribute to all the victims. I became a negationist. And there is a magazine in Paris, French and African magazine, for which I was considered as a negationist. Maybe that will be for the next conference. I did write a book, and I said that Kagame did sacrifice the Tutsis. Well, Kizito Mihigo, whenever he sang that song, he said that those who are dead have the same value. He became the enemy of Rwanda. He was put in jail, and for alleged facts. For example, they said that he wanted to kill the president. He was sentenced to a 10-year sentence. He was released at the end of 2018 because of a pardon by the president after 4 years in jail. And Victoire, another lady, was also put in jail for a 15-year sentence in jail because she was just advocating for justice, like any Rwandan citizen. And her name was Victoire Ingabire. So this is what is at stake today regarding remembrance. This is so much important. It's a big issue for the President Kagame, because if you say that Hutus have this right, this duty, for example, it means that, of course, RPF did kill those people. It means that Kagame, they were killed by Kagame and his troops. If you tell that in Rwanda, you will have some problems. And if you say that thousands of dead people, be careful, because you cannot say that to the Rwandan government.
And this is what leads me to say that all the rest is all well and fine. You have a clean capital. That's what was said of Kigali before 1990. If you have Congolese from Bukavu here, they know that before 1990, there was no longer any post office in Bukavu. The post offices had closed. I don't know why. I don't know what led them not to have the postal service. And one of my brothers had set up post boxes on the border, and all the people from Bukavu posted their letters on the border, and they had post boxes on the border. So that's secondary. I mean, cleanliness, infrastructures. Syria was one of the most developed countries of its region. I'll go to Syria now, you know. If the policies don't work, it's all well and fine. You have fine buildings, but they can be demolished in 24 hours. What you need is infrastructures. That's what was done in Tanzania. Tanzania is not a rich country, but it is strong and solid. And that's what Rwandans should have as a model. There's no point in building apartment blocks or arenas if part of the population, 85% of the population, is frustrated because it is excluded from political life, other aspects of life. I haven't said that in Rwanda, the RPF army is 99% Tutsis. All of the commanders are Tutsis, and it's a major mistake. You cannot build an apartheid of that type and promote reconciliation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I might have spoken with passion, but it is normal because I'm talking about my people of its two components, Hutu and Tutsis, because I belong to the both communities. It can be a good thing because it enables one to understand, but it is also a major pain when we are split between the two communities. And it is true also for other Rwandans, a lot of Rwandans. We don't have. We have to have equality between the citizens as it is respected in all other countries. I had another topic that I wanted to dwell on, but I can see you and I can see some people dropping off. No, it's not because we're tired of of listening to you, but we are very late. But I would like to stress, I would like to pay tribute to my Congolese friends, and in the speeches that our Congolese friends make on the radio and television, you must not throw everybody together. You know, all Rwandans are not on Kagame's side. A lot of them suffer more than the Congolese from Kagame. So I think you have to create synergy between the progressive forces in our region. The Congolese who want change and Rwandans who want a positive change, Burundians, Tanzanians, they must come together, they must talk things over and see how they can do it by avoiding wars and by putting an end to those despotic regimes. Thank you very much.